Good day, everyone. Today we are discussing Chapter 4, The Irrationality of Rationality by Max Weber. Yan. So ating alamin kung sino nga ba si Max Weber. Early life and family relationships of Weber. Okay? Si Max Weber ay pinanganak noong April 21, 1865 sa Erfurt, Prussia na mas kilala natin ngayon bilang Germany. He was a German sociologist, political economist, and influential thinker. His contribution to sociology and the social sciences remains significant hanggang sa panahon natin ngayon. Weber was the eldest son of Max Sr. and Helen Weber. Okay? Siya yung panganay sa kanilang pitong magkakapatid. Yan. His father is an aspiring liberal politician, while his mother, raised in Calvin's orthodoxy, maintained Puritan morality. So ano nga ba yung Puritan morality? Okay? By definition, you describe someone as Puritan when they live according to strict moral or religious principles. Ayan. Okay? Sa early life ni Weber, his father moved their family from Germany to Berlin. And there his father became a member of the Prussian House of Deputies and the Reichstag. And doon na nagsimula ma-expose si Max Weber sa intellectual world kasi the Weber household hosted prominent politicians and scholars. Doon na na-shape yung intellectual environment ni Max Weber kasi nakamit siya ng different or various prominent politicians and scholars na maring naka-impluwensya sa kanya nung bata pa siya. And kaya siya nag-inspire na pasukin din yung mundo ng intellectual world. Ayan. However, yan, yung family ni Weber, kagaya ng lahat, ay hindi naman perpekto. Nagkaroon din ng conflicts between his parents at ito yung nag-contribute sa inner struggles ni Weber hanggang sa tumanda siya. Yan. Parang trauma ba sa buhay? Ganun. Okay, Weber's intellectual world. So, nag-enroll si Max Weber sa University of Heidelberg noong 1882. Then, nag-military service siya. After fulfilling his military service, ay nag-continue siya ng pag-aaral sa University of Berlin kung saan nag-focus siya sa legal and economic history. During this time, he developed close ties with the family of his mother's sister, Ida Baumgarten, and her husband, historian Hermann Baumgarten. So Hermann significantly influenced Weber's intellectual growth, and during this time, he also intersected with other prominent scholars, namely Windelband, Rickert, and Dilthey. Ayan. So ayan si Wilhelm Windelband. So he was closely associated with Weber, and his disciples included not only philosophers but also sociologists like Max Weber and theologians like Ernst Troeltsch and Albert Spitzer. So Windelband's work influenced Weber's thinking, particularly in the realm of cultural sciences. In Germany, Kulturwissenschaften. Okay? So next, si Heinrich Rickert. Si Heinrich Rickert ay isang another key figure sa intellectual world ni Max Weber. Ayan. Both Rickert and Weber grappled with questions related to historicity, human existence, and the meaning of history. So Rickert's concept of Kulturwissenschaften or cultural sciences in English, okay, resonated with Weber's interest in understanding cultural phenomena and their historical context. So, last one, ayan, si Wilhelm Dilthey. Okay? Si Wilhelm Dilthey, isa rin sa significant na naka-influensya kay Weber. Okay? So, he emphasizes the importance of understanding subjective meanings and motivations behind human behavior. His work laid the groundwork for Weber's exploration of social action theory and the concept of Verstehen, so the empathetic understanding. Both Dilthey and Weber sought empirical approaches to historical synthesis aiming to uncover regularities underlying human affairs. So, overall, in summary, okay, Max Weber's intellectual journey intersected with these thinkers, shaping his ideas on sociology, history, and human condition. Their collective contributions continue to resonate in the study of social sciences and cultural phenomena. Keywords and ideas of Max Weber. So, ayan, i-explain ko lang sila ng briefly kasi later ay ire-report sila ng aking mga ka-group. So, the first one, okay, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, 1905. So, dito, in-explore ni Max Weber yung relationship between Protestantism and capitalism. Dito, in-argue niya na yung Protestant religious belief, particularly yung Protestant ethic, ay nakaka-impluensya sa pagtaas or pag-rise ng modern capitalism. Next one, the bureaucracy. Ayan. Uh, Dito sa bureaucracy naman, in-emphasize niyo yung rationality, efficiency, and hierarchical structure. Dito, in-analyze niya kung paano ba nakakatulong or paano ba sineshape ng bureaucracy yung modern organizations and institutions. Okay? Sa social action theory naman, to Weaver developed the theory of social action, emphasizing subjective meanings and motivations behind human behavior. Kung bakit ba ganun yung kinikilos ng isang tao, kung ano yung meaning behind that, kung bakit ganun siya. Ganun. So, his typology of social action included instrumental rational, value rational, affectual, and traditional action. Okay? And lastly, the Verstehan. Okay, later, i-explain ko yan sa susunod na slide. So, yung Verstehan, isa siyang German word na nangangahulugang understanding sa English. And Weber advocated for understanding social phenomena by empathizing with actors' perspectives. So Verstehen involves grasping the subjective meanings individuals attach to their actions. Okay? And specific methods, ideal types, and Verstehen. So the first one, the ideal types. The concept of ideal types is one of Weber's significant contributions to contemporary sociology. It serves as a methodological tool for understanding and analyzing social reality. So ano ba yung purpose ng ideal types? Okay? Ideal types are mental constructs or models na nag-aalaw sa mga sociologists to systematically characterize and scrutinize concrete situations. They are not descriptions of reality, but rather serves as an ambiguous means of expressions. Tinutulungan neto yung mga researchers para i-classify and i-compare yung isang social phenomena ng walang bias. Okay? They are constructed based on carefully collected empirical facts and serves as guiding models for empirical research. So, yung ideal type, siya yung nag-act as a measuring rod of reality, enabling researchers to assess deviations from the constructed model. So, ang pinaka dapat lang tandaan about sa ideal types ay ideal types are not influenced by values. Their function is purely methodological. Okay? So, next one, the verse 10, or in English, understanding. Verstehen emphasizes the importance of understanding the subjective meanings and motivations behind people's actions. So, rather than treating individuals as mere objects of study, Verstehen encourages researchers to empathetically grasp the subjective experiences and intentions that drive human behavior. Okay? By adopting Verstehen, yung mga sociologists ay nagkakaroon ng deeper insight sa isang social realities beyond surface level observations. Mas nakakapag ano sila, mas nakakapag-dive deep sila sa isang social realities or sa isang tao kapag ginagamit nila tong Verstehen. So, sa paggamit ng Verstehen, nare-recognize nila yung social phenomena na nag-shape sa isang individual na perception, cultural context, and historical backgrounds. Okay? So, sa inaalaw ng Verstehen yung mga researchers para explore yung buhay ng isang individual considering their unique perspectives and emotions para makapag-dive deep sila sa isang tao. Yun lang yun. Para makapag-dive deep lang sila sa human behavior, ganun. Para mas maintindihan lang nila um, yung isang individual. Okay? So, in summary, the ideal types provide a systematic framework for analysis, while Verstehen enables a richer understanding of social phenomena by delving into the subjective aspects of human behavior. Ayan lang. Next. Later years of Max Weber. Ayan. Weber suffered a mental breakdown in 1897 kung saan hindi siya nakapagtrabaho ng 5 years. But despite this setback, he published influential works and returned to teaching in 1918. Then, sadly, yeah, he passed away on June 14, 1920 in Munich, Germany. So, Max Weber's legacy endures through his profound impact on sociology, economics, and our understanding of human behavior in complex societies. And thank you.
So ako nga pala ang next presenter, ako nga pala si Gerald Cabalquinto. Ang i-discuss ko sa inyo is all about the concept and theory, the rationalization of society, religion. So first is Marx was highly critical of religion, as we have seen. However, most of them of modernity theories view religion as a complex aspect of society. So si Marx is dalibhasa or critical siya mag-isip about sa religion sa mga nakikita natin. Pero most of them sa modernity theories yung tingin natin sa religion is a complex aspect o komplikado sa ating lipunan. So next is, according to Weber, religion served as primary concept or primary organizing concept throughout history and is still important today. So sabi ni Weber na ang religion is nagsisilbi pa rin or serve as a primary organizing concept throughout sa ating history. And also, nananatili pa rin siyang importante sa panahon natin ngayon. Next is, there is no communal activity without its special God. So kapag daw walang communal activity meaning lang nun is a group activity siya or group or organization activity na dapat is yung entire group is nagbe-benefit siya sa bawat isa. So kapag daw walang ganon is wala daw special God or walang natatanging Diyos nito. Sabi pa dito is, indeed, if an association is to be permanently guaranteed, it must have such a God. But religion has historically changed. So yung religion is nagbabago pa rin siya through history. So kapag nagtatagal or kapag kunyari nung mga nakaraang mga taon or years is nagbabago pa rin yung religion. There are two basic approaches. First is progressive revelation and second is social evolution. So pag sinabi natin progressive revelation, argues that there are always been one God who is concerned with the way we behave. So sa progressive revelation, naniniwala sila na isa lang ang God or ang Diyos. Kung saan yung concept nito is ina-emphasize niya yung unity of the religious truth and the interconnectedness of different faith traditions. So naniniwala lang sila sa isang God kasi nga para ma-interconnected or may connected yung bawat isa through their religion. So next is social evolution, posits a link between religion and society. Dito naman is it involves the society na dapat is ma-adapt, mag-grow or mag-transform into the response through the factor ng mga culture, ng environment, and the interaction ng society and the religion. Generally speaking, Weber 1948 sees the evolution of religion as changing along a path of domestication or disenchantment. So, sa sinabi dito ni Weber noong 1948 or 1948 na nakita niya yung evolution ng religion sa pagbabago nito along the path ng domestication and disenchantment. Ano nga ba ang domestication? Ang domestication is nagre-refer siya sa process kung saan nire-reveal nila yung truth or reality behind something that was previously seen a mysterious or supernatural. Pag sinabi naman natin na disenchantment, ito ay nagre-refer naman ito through the behind that the modern world is becoming increasingly rationalized, bureaucratic, and devoid of mystery or magic. Part of this, of course, is in the religious sense of secularization. Peter Berger, 1967, ay nag-provide siya ng magandang definition ng secularization. Sabi niya dito is, by secularization, we mean the process by which sectors of society and culture is removed from the dominance of religious institutions and symbols. So next is from magic to religion. Monotheism, meaning nito is naniniwala lang sila in one God or the belief in one God. So sa ethical monotheism naman is the belief in one God that cares about the human behavior. For much of human history, we believe in many God and goddesses. So sa history ng mga tao, naniniwala ang mga ito na marami ang God and goddesses or mga Diyos or Diyosa. And we didn't feel that they care much about we behave. What's more, most of the god and goddesses were quite risky in their own actions. The reason for his focus on ethical monotheism is that its historic shift play a powerful role the rationalization of human behavior. So kaya daw nag-focus ito sa ethical monotheism or yung naniniwala sila sa isang God lang dahil daw yung parang naka-connected daw yung ethical monotheism sa human behavior. Next is Weber was the first to recognize that the transition in history from naturalism to symbolism is comparable to the movement from the magic to religion na sinasabi natin kanina. Direct manipulation of forces is what magic is. These forces are though to be nearly identical to nature. So next is dito is parang i-differentiate niya kung yung magic and the religion. Parang i-differentiate niya dito. So to assure a good harvest, a magician might to perform a fertility ritual because seeds and fertility are all wrapped up together. So on the other hand, yung religion naman is more symbolic. Let's take Christian communion for example. In Protestant churches, the bread and grape juice symbolize the body of the blood of Christ. So sa mga natin sa bawat simbahan is ayun talaga yung sinisimbolize nung grapes and bread na yung bread daw is yung ostia is yung body or yung katawan daw ni Kristo. And then yung grape is the blood of Christ. So, they represent not only the atonement but also solidarity believers have in sharing the same body. So sabi nga kanina na yung sa magician, nagpe-perform sila ng fertility ritual. But sa religion naman, binigyan ng example dito na yung Christian communion na sa isang churches or Protestant churches na yung bread and grapes ay nagsisimbolize as a blood and body of Christ. So two versions is to bring out the point of Weber. First dito is the Protestant communion and the second is Catholic Eucharist. Sa Protestant communion, there are only symbolic element present. So symbolic elements lang yung nakikita dito. So sa Catholic Eucharist naman, there are actual elements present that bring about effects in their own right. So yung sa Protestant communion, symbolic element lang yung nagre-present doon. On the other hand naman, is sa Catholic Eucharist, actual element para mag-present yung effects yung own rights. Next is Catholic Eucharist. There are actual elements present that bring about effects in their own rights. Weber would argue that there are magical elements present in the Eucharist. This isn't mean as the slight against Catholic or hindi to ibig sabihin na against sila sa Catholicism or slight against sa Protestantism. Or ito is is nakadepende pa rin to sa perspective mo. It is simply meant to point out that these things work in different ways. With the Eucharist, there is direct manipulation of forces to accomplish some purposes, which is Weber's definition of magic. From polytheism to ethical monotheism. In the beginning, religious practice was oriented around local gods and goddesses. These gods lived in a specific location and were connected to a specific collectiveness or collectives. The next step in religious evolution was to place these local gods into organized pantheism or pantheons. Organized pantheons are not simply cluster or various of gods and goddesses. Rather, in a pantheon, each deity is given a specific sphere or influence. So, yung mga GT daw, is binibigyan sila ng specific sphere or ng influence, or sphere of influence. And the activity or yung gawain daw ng GTs is mag-relate to each other or to one another. Professionalization and symbolisms play important roles in the religious evolution to pantheons. Professionals affected religion primarily through increasing the level of abstraction, analogies, thinking, religious stereotyping, and the use of symbol in ritual rather than the actual things. Weber point out that their oldest use of paper money was to venerate the dead, not pay off the living, and creating coherent system of knowledge out to localized beliefs. In short, a religious became more professionalized, intended to become more rationally and abstractly organized. So, sa madaling salita, ang religion daw, habang siya ay nagiging professionalized or professionalized, mas nagiging ano pa daw siya, magiging rationally and abstractly organized. Weaver divides prophecy in two types. First is exemplary type. This kind of prophet shows the way by being an example. The emphasis in this case is on a kind of self-actualization. There is no real sense of right and wrong, but only in a better way. And next is ethical prophet. Is vitally concerned with God and evil and with bringing in wayward people back to the right relationship with the dominant God. Yun lang po, and maraming salamat.
Good day everyone! I'm Karil Sandrine Aquino at ang i-report ko ay patungkol sa concepts and theory, the rationalization of society, capitalism. Ayon kay Weber, may tatlong pangunahing salik na naka-impluwensya sa pag-usbong ng kapitalismo. Bilang isang pang-ekonomiyang anyo, ito ay ang reliyon, mga bansang estado at mga teknolohiya sa transportasyon at komunikasyon. Interesado rin siyang ipaliwanag ang mga paunang kondisyon para sa kapitalismo kaysa sa pagtukoy ng pagkakasunod-sunod na sanhi. Umako naman tayo sa The Religious Culture of Capitalism. Ang Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism ay ang pinakakilalang gawa ni Weber. Sa loob nito, inilalarawan niya ang isang perpektong uri ng diwa ng kapitalismo, na nagsasagawa siya ng historical comparative analysis upang matukoy kung paano at kailan nagkakaroon ng ganoong uri ng kapitalismo. At ginagamit niya ang konsepto ng Verstehen upang maunawaan ang subjective orientation at motivation of the actors. May tatlong magkakaugnay na dahilan si Weber sa pagsulat ng aklat. Una, nais niyang kontrahin ang argumento ni Marx hinggil sa pag-usbong ng kapitalismo. Tinutukoy ni Weber ang makasaysayang materialismo ni Marx bilang walang muwang. Pangalawa, nais ni Weber na makipagtalo laban sa malupit na pwersang pang-istruktura at para sa epekto ng mga halagang pangkultura sa aksyong panlipunan. At panghuli ay upang ipaliwanag kung bakit ang makatwirang kapitalismo ay bumangon sa kanluran at wala saan man. In traditional capitalism, hawak pa rin ang mga tradisyonal na halaga at posisyon sa katayuan. Ang mga piling tao ay mamumuhunan ngunit gumugugol ng kaunting oras at pagsisikap sa paggawa nito upang mabuhay tulad ng kanilang nakasanayan na buhay. Ang makatwirang kapitalismo sa kabilang banda ay ginagawa upang dagdagan ang yaman para sa sarili nitong kapakanan at batay sa utilitarian na relasyong panlipunan. Ang unang gawain ni Weber ay tukuyin ang diwa ng kapitalismo. Si Weber ay nababahala sa pagpapakita na ang isang partikular na kultural na kapaligiran o pag-iisip ay kinakailangan para sa mga twirang kapitalismo upang umanlad. Ang diwa ng kapitalismo ay umiiral bilang isang ethical-oriented maxim para sa organisasyon ng buhay. Ang kulturang ito, kung gayon, ay may pakiramdam na tungkulin dito at ang mga individual na bahagi nito ay nakikita bilang mga virtues. Ang modernong kapitalismo ay naglalaman ng mga prinsipyo para sa paraan ng pag-organisa o pagsasabuhay ng mga tao sa kanilang buhay. Ayon kay Weber, kung paano ang paraan ng iyong pamumuhay ay hindi lamang basta simpleng bagay na nagiging concern ng isang individual. Ang modernong kapitalismo ay nagbibigay sa atin ng ilang mga prinsipyo mga halaga, mga kasabihan at moral na nagsisilbing batayan na nagsasabi sa atin kung paano nga ba mamuhay. There are 3 such prescriptions in the spirit of capitalism according to Weber. Ang una ay ang buhay ay dapat isabuhay ng may isang tiyak na layunin sa isip. Ibig sabihin, mamuhay tayo ng mabuti at moral na maging tapat, mapagkakatiwalaan, matipid, organisado at makatwiran. Dahil ito ay kapaki-pakinabang para sa isang tiyak na layunin. Sinasabi ng kultura ng modernong kapitalismo na ang pera ay dapat kitain, ngunit hindi dapat sayangin. Ang agarang kasiyahan at kusang kasiyahan ay dapat ipagpaliban upang ang pera ay makatuwirang magamit. Ibig sabihin, ito ay dapat ipuhunan para kumita ng mas maraming pera. Ang paggawa ng pera ay nagiging isang bukas sa sarili nito at ang layunin ng buhay. Bawat isa sa atin ay dapat magkaroon ng bokasyonal na tungkulin. Ang isa pang salita para sa bokasyon ay trabaho. Obligado tayong ituloy ang trabaho. May tungkulin tayong magtrabaho. Sa diwa ng kapitalismo, ang trabaho ay pinahahalagahan sa sarili nito. Ang mga tao ay palaging nagtatrabaho, ngunit sa pangkalahatan, kami ay nagtatrabaho upang makamit ang isang layunin. Ang diwa ng kapitalismo, gayunpaman, ay nagtataas ng trabaho bilang isang katangiang moral. Sa kultura ng kapitalismo, ang trabaho ay nagiging isang layunin sa kanyang sarili, sa halip sa isang paraan sa isang layunin. Ang huli ay ang buhay at mga aksyon ay lehitimo sa batayan ng mahigpit na quantitative calculation. Maaring bigyang katwiran ng mga taong kanilang mga pag-uugali mula sa iba't ibang pinakamataas na posisyon at palaging ginagawang lehitimo ang pag-uugali. Lahat tayo ay maaaring magkwento tungkol sa kung bakit tama ang ating mga pag-uugali o damdamin o pagtatangi. At ang mga kwentong iyon ay maaaring sabihin mula sa iba't ibang pananaw, maaaring sa relihiyon, politika o personal. Ang punto ni Weber dito ay ang kultura ng kapitalismo ay nagpapahalaga sa quantitative legitimations. Iyon ay ang kapitalistang pag-uugali ay lehitimo sa mga tuntunin ng bottom line o mga pagkalkula ng kahusayan. Ang makikita natin dito ay kung paano ang kultura sa sandaling ipinanganak ay maaaring magkaroon ng hindi sinasadya at independenteng mga epekto mula sa paglikha ng grupo nito. Ang protestantismo ay hindi direktang nagbunga ng kapitalismo, ngunit ito ay lumikha ng isang kultura na kapag nahiwalay sa kanyang panlipunang grupo, nakaimpluwensya sa pag-usbong ng kapitalismo. Ang pinakamahalagang doktrina ng relihiyon sa likod ng diwa ng kapitalismo ay ang paniwala ni Martin Luther tungkol sa isang tungkulin. Ang isang tungkulin ay nakita bilang isang bagay na kakaiba sa priesthood. The next one is structural influences on capitalism. Ipinapangatwiran ni Weber na ang makatuwirang kapitalismo sa kanluran ay nakatagpo ng isang punlaan sa isang kulturang malakas na naiimpluwensyahan ng protestantismo. Gayunpaman, may iba pang mga kondisyon para sa paglitaw din ng kapitalismo. Ang mga ito ay nakahati sa mga impluwensyang institusyonal, istruktura, at kultura, ngunit ang mga demarkasyong ito ay hindi malinaw. Ang lahat ng mga prosesong ito ay kapwa nagpapatibay sa isa't isa. Sa partikular na kapitalismo, mayroong pabalik-balik na paggalaw sa pagitan ng kultura at istruktura sa mga tuntunin ng sanhi ng impluwensya. Nakita natin ang impluwensya ng protestantismo, ngunit sa mga tuntunin ng mga institusyon, kailangan ding magkaroon ng sentralisadong estado, gayon din ng mga makabuluhang pagbabago sa mga paraan ng transportasyon at komunikasyon. Ang mga isyong pang-estruktura ay mas malinaw kaysa sa mga isyong pang-kultura na karaniwang nangyayari. Ang mga bansang estado ay mga kamakailang imbensyon. Hanggang sa ika-19 na siglo, ang mga tao ay karaniwang organisado ayon sa etniko na may medyo tuloy-tuloy na mga hangganan ng teritoryo. Ang isang bansa ay isang kolektibo ng mga tao na sumasakop sa isang partikular na teritoryo. May iisang kasaysayan at pagkakakinlanlan at nakikita ang kanilang mga sarili bilang isang karaniwang kapalaran. Ang mga bansa ay may pananagutan sa pagkontrol sa malalaking teritoryo, pag-standardize ng pera, pag-aayos ng panlipunang kontrol, at pagpapadali sa mga malaya at bukas na pamilihan. Ang lahat ng mga salik na ito ay nagpapahintulot para sa mas madaling pagpapalitan ng mga kalakal at serbisyo na kinasasangkutan ng malalaking populasyon. Mga ganitong uri ng pagpapalitan ay kinakailangan para umiral ang makatwirang kapitalismo. Kinailangan ding palayain ang paggawa mula sa mga hadlang sa lipunan at istruktura. Ang kapitalismo ay nakasalalay sa isang lakas paggawa na malayong magbenta ng kanyang paggawa sa bukas na merkado. Kasabay ng mga pagtaas sa mga teknolohiya ng komunikasyon at transportasyon, ang mga bansang estado at protestantismo ay tumutulong sa pagbuo ng isang objectified, rationalized na kultura kung saan ang mga nakasulat na record ay itinatago. Ang mga tao ay nagsasagawa ng isang malakas na etika sa trabaho kasama ng ascetisismo at ang tradisyonal na dualistic na diskarte sa mga relasyon sa ekonomiya ay nasisira. Sa mga tradisyonal na lipunan, ang mga grupo ay karaniwang may dalawang magkaibang uri ng etika kapag nakikilahok sa mga palitan. May mga paghihigpit na may kinalaman sa ritual at pagiging patas kapag nakikitungo sa mga miyembro ng grupo, ngunit ang mga tao sa labas ng grupo ay maaaring pagsamantalahan ng walang sukat. Ang lahat ng negosyo at mga pautang ay kailangang i-rationalize upang magkaroon ng pagpapatuloy. Thank you so much! So now let's proceed to the next presenter.
Concept and theory, the rationalization of society bureaucracy. To be human is to be social, and to be social is to be organized. Thus, organization is primary to what it means to be human. Human beings have been organized over time by different social forms, and these have clear consequences for us. In not too distant past, we are organized much of our lives around effective emotional-based systems such as kinship. Kinship linked people through blood and marriage. In such organizations, people saw each other in terms of familial obligations and rights which they felt as emotional ties. But today, we are organized through mostly bureaucratic means. From the time you were put in school at the age of 5 or 6, bureaucracies have been organizing your life. You know how to stand in line, how to use time, minister the insurance agent. As a result of spending most of your life in the bureaucracy, even our dining experience has been strongly influenced by the bureaucracy, thanks to McDonald's. As George Ritzer says, the fast food restaurant is the epitome of rationalizations in contemporary society. McDonaldizations involve an increase in efficiency, predictability, calculability, and control for workers and customers alike. The work process is controlled and tastes precisely the same as those brought in Los Angeles, as customers our tastes have been socialized as that we expect and welcome this product homogenization. Every square foot of the restaurant is planned efficiency and control, including customers' actions from the moment we walk in the door until we throw the trash in the bins and stack the trays. Bureaucracies tend to rationalize and routinize all the tasks and interactions. They are rationalized in terms of means and efficiency, and they are routinized in the sense that they may not be carried out with true or planning or dependency on individual talents. Thus, each person and task is met in an equal and efficiency manner. Personal issues and emotions do not place in bureaucracy. Sabi lang dito, simula pa ng pagkabata tayo, simula pa ng pumunta tayo sa paaralan, tinuruan na tayo or na-organize na tayo through bureaucracy or organized system. Kasi tinuruan tayo kung paano sumagot ng tama, paano magtaas ng kamay, paano umupo sa seating arrangement, and paano makipag-interact the same way as the others. According to Weber, there are at least 6 preconditions for bureaucracy, and they don't necessarily occur in a specific order. These include increase in the following: the size and space of populations being organized. Sabi dito, kasi nga lumalaki na and complex na yung mga tao, and nagkalat na sa vast geographical location yung mga tao, it is not suitable to organize people in emotional and blood ties, kaya nagkaroon tayo ng organized means of organizations like the bureaucracy para ma-handle tayo. Pero hindi lamang ang hindi lamang sa karamihan ng populasyon nakadepende ang bureaucracy dahil the best example of that is the China. They maintain kinship kahit na medyo vast na yung society nila. The second one is the complexity of the task being performed. Nagsimula lang ito nung French Revolutionary period nung nagkaroon na ng mga complex tasks, nagkaroon na tayo ng mga hierarchical system, nagkaroon na ng divisions of labor, kaya dapat nagkaroon na tayo ng magandang hierarchy or social order. Two, the use of markets and money economy. Since nagkaroon na ng market and money economy, bumibilis na ang dapat efficient na and mabilis tayo mag-compute ng mga bagay-bagay in our government. Kaya hindi na dapat tayo nagre-rely sa traditional way of organizations. Kaya dapat na nating pumunta sa more efficient and more computable na organizations. Next is communication and transportation technology. Since sabi nga kanina, globalization is emerging and yung communications and transportation technologies is nag-emerge na rin. Kailangan natin ng state na adaptable and suitable sa environment natin kasi nga yung traditional way of organizations is nagbe-base yung law niya sa history and hindi ganun kabilis mag-promulgate ng mga batas. Sa bureaucracy or sa logical bureaucracy is nagkakaroon na ng mabilis na pag-enact ng mga law. Yung mga law na ginagawa na is nababagay na sa napapanahon ngayon. And the next factors is the use of mass democracy. Since nagkaroon na tayo ng democracy and yung democracy na it's revolve around everyone. Kaya sinasabi na dito na dapat na tayong magkaroon ng organized na society kasi nga dapat tinitignan na natin yung individual as equal, hindi na yung may mayaman, may mataas o wala nang ganun, dapat equal na lahat. The last one is the volume of complicated and rationalized culture. Since complicated na nga and rationalized culture, kailangan natin maging logical, rationalized kasi nga meron tayong tinatawag na iba-ibang kultura, iba-ibang culture, pinagsama-sama, kailangan natin maging maalam para hindi natin ma-invalidate yung feelings ng iba. The ideal typology. Weaver gives us an ideal bureaucracy. This ideal type is not intended to tell us what the perfect bureaucracy should look like. Rather, Weaver uses it as an objective yardstick against which we may measure different subjective and cultural states. Weaver talks about bureaucracy in number of different places, but if we combine this list, we come up with 6 important features to the ideal bureaucracy. The first one is an explicit division of labor with delineated lines of authority. 2. The presence of office hierarchy. 3. Written rules and communications. 4. Accredited training and technical competencies. 5. Management by rules that is emotionally neutral. And number 6. Ownership of both career ladder positions by the organizations rather than individuals. And now let's analyze the first one. An explicit division of labor with delineated lines of authority. Sinasabi dito na kailangan doon natin magkaroon ng clear line and boundaries between individual, what are the things they can do. For example, yung ginagawa ng Office 1 ay hindi dapat gawin ni Office 2 and yung Office 2 hindi dapat ginagawa ni Office 1. Dapat meron silang clear boundaries kung ano lang yung mga dapat nilang panghimasukan para maiwasan natin yung mga conflict. Number 2, the presence of an office hierarchy. Since sabi nga natin sa number 1 na kailangan natin ng clear boundary between offices, dito naman sa number 2 sinasabi na dapat magkaroon tayo ng hierarchical order para magkaroon tayo ng subordination sa executives and malaman din ang command chains. Merong orders galing sa taas, merong susunod galing sa baba and vice versa. Kaya para magkaroon tayo ng communications. Diyan na pupunta yung number 3, written rules and communications. Napaka-importante nito sa isang bureaucracy. Why? Because written rules and communications is the framework of each organizations kasi sila ang tinatawag nating bylaws. Dito natin nakasaad kung ano ang dapat gawin, kung ano ang dapat hindi gawin, kung ano ang kaparusahan sa mga sa mga kaparusahan kung mga nalabag ka. Malalaman mo rin dito kung ano-ano nga ba dapat ang tama kung ano-ano nga ba dapat ang objectives, mission, visions, and other written factors or written frameworks ng inyong organizations. Number 5, management by the rules that is emotionally neutral. It means na dapat yung mga namumuno or yung nasa organizations is nagbe-based or yung judgment nila is based in their logical sense, not in their emotional being. Kasi nga, pag sinamahan natin ng emotion yung ating mga judgment, nagkakaroon tayo ng problema. Kasi as an individual nature na natin, magkaroon tayo ng biases kung pupunta tayo sa emotional one. Number 6 is ownership of both career ladder and positions by the organizations rather than individuals. Sinasabi rin dito na dapat daw yung both yung career ladder is nakukuha lamang siya sa true positions rather than individual. For example, para ma-promote ka, hindi mo kailangan ng backer or something like that. You need credibility, accountability, and efficiency of your work in order for you to promote. Hindi mo kailangan ng kakilala, ng kapit, or kahit anong bagay para ma-promote. Kailangan lang is your skills, competencies, and accountability in your job. That's with all. There are different theories regarding the bureaucracy in social process, but all of them are inusus. It means marami man theory about the social process in the bureaucracy, lahat sila are harmless pero hindi natin may iwasan na magkaroon ng inevitable or unseen consequences regarding sa bureaucracy. For it is best I the best analogy is the car. We put gasoline in order for a car to run, but inevitably yung car is nagpo-produce ng pollutions. Ganun din yung bureaucracy. Meron siyang isa siya sa mga good na nangyari sa civilizations, pero meron ding mga bagay na hindi natin maiiwasan. For example, bureaucracy make the world emptier. It means kasi nga yung objective ng bureaucracy is means to end efficiency. Parang means to end lang tayo. Yun na natin ninanamnam yung process. Yung process, it means na parang nawawalan na yung real meaning ng will. For example, poetry, music, foods, etc. It makes us who we are, but the real meaning of music is not to tell stories anymore, not to tell your emotions, not to show the world what you feel, but rather what some singers, composer wrote a song not order to tell their stories, but rather to gain money, to gain fame. And also artists, painters, they not showing they are not doing the real meaning of painting, showing what they feel, using using brush in order to show the artistry they have, the but rather some of the painters paints for the money. And also the food. Dati kumakain tayo para namnamin natin yung panlasa. We devour we devour food to taste the delicious sensation of it. But now, bago tayo kumain, check muna natin kung ilang calories, kung ilang protein, kung ano nga ba ang nakuha nating nutrients. Yes, it is a good, but we lose the enjoyment of eating it. Why? Because we always see the effect in the long run. We eat this, too much sugar, too much this, too much that. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng worries sa ating sarili. Kaya nawawalan na ng meaning yung buhay natin. For example, we go to school. Not, not to learn new things, nurture our talents, see the world difference, but rather we go to school in order for us to get the diplomas, get to get the credibility in order for us to work. And that's make our world emptier. We lose the process and enjoyment. We always see the end of the situation. Importantly, bureaucratizations and rationalizations influence the kinds of actions we engage in and the kinds of relationship we have. To talk about this issue, Weaver developed an ideal typology of social actions with 4 types. Instrumental rational actions is the behavior in which the means and ends of actions are rationally related to each other. Sabi dito sa instrumental rational actions daw, dapat yung behavior natin is inline sa gusto nating mangyari. For example, sabi ko kanina na pumapasok na lang tayo sa school in order for us to learn, change our perspective, but rather to get our diplomas, to get our credibility in order for us to work. The next one is value rationalizations. Value rationalizations is guided by our behavior. If our actions contradict our value, it's value rational behavior. Next one is traditional action is determined or motivated by the habit, and effective action is determined by the people's emotion in given situations. All of these different types of behavior can become social actions insofar as we take into account the behaviors and subjective orientations of other actors, whether present or absent. Society is affected as well as the bureaucracy. There are 2 main effects. The first is the iron cage bureaucracy. When bureaucracies are in place there, they are virtually inescapable and indestructible for several reasons. They are the most efficient form of organizing large-scale populations. They are value-free and they are based upon expert knowledge. We've seen that individuals with the rational society become more and more independent upon expert knowledge. The same is true about leaders. Whether the leaders are in charge of political, religious, or economic organizations, they become increasingly dependent upon rationally trained personnel and expert knowledge in bureaucratic information age. As we noted under the professionalizations, the experts themselves engage in secrecy and mystifications in order to avoid inspections and secure their positions. Further, one of the definitions of the professional is self-administrations, which means the bureaucratic expert become a self-recruiting and self-governing class, existing apart from any other organizational control. Thus, neither the people ruled, nor the rulers, nor the expert themselves can escape the dominations in the bureaucratic form. The next, the next effect of bureaucracy is the society is that it accelerates the process of credentialing. Remembering the positions with the bureaucracy is achieved through diplomas and certifications. Bureaucracies were created in the age of reason as a way to organize people rationally rather than through favoritism. Sinasabi rin dito na dahil nga nagkaroon na tayo ng rationalizations and logical thinking, ang promotions is nakabase na nga sa reasons, age of reasons na nagbe-base na tayo sa diplomas, diplomas, efficiency, set of skills rather than favoritism. But I think this effect this effect of bureaucracy is not always manifesting in all aspects of life, because whether we agree or not, here in the Philippines there always be a favoritism in terms of promotions, how to apply jobs. There always be a favoritism. For some, it accelerates the process of credentialing, but for other countries, it's not.
Yung definition ni Weber about class ay different kay Marx. According kay Karl Marx, class is around the ownership of production, and yung kay Weber naman, dinedefine niya yung class based sa kakayahan mo bumili or magbenta ng goods or services na magbibigay sa'yo ng inner satisfaction and will also increase your life chances. According kay Weber, mayroong 2 main class distinction, and each class meron siyang positively privileged, negatively privileged, and middle class positions. Yung property class ay nade-determine siya based sa property differences. Either pagmamay-ari mo yung property, positive, or wala kang pagmamay-ari na property, negative. Or hindi ka naman nakakakuha ng wealth or surplus sa isang property, pero hindi ka naman parang nangangailangan, with the middle. Yung commercial class naman, nade-determine siya based sa ability mo mag-trade and mag-manage ng market position. Yung mga positive privilege, karamihan ay mga entrepreneurs. Kaya nilang kontrolin at i-maintain yung kanilang market position. Yung mga negative privilege, karamihan ay mga laborers. They are dependent on the whim of the labor market. Yung mga middle privilege, sila yung mga self-employed farmers, craft people, or low-level professionals. Sila yung may access sa market position pero wala silang kakayahan i-control ito, unlike ng mga positive privilege na nakokontrol ang position nila sa market. Sa status and property, Weber sees stratification as more complex than class. Hindi lang sa money, interesado ang mga tao, pati na rin sa social esteem or honor. Itong issue na to ay tinawag ni Weber na status. Para kay Weber, ang status ay kapag kaya mong makuha yung social esteem in terms of positive or negative privileges. Yung mga status group ay nakarang based sa kanilang structural or cultural criteria and nagkakaroon ng differences in terms of honor and privilege. Kung sa class, madedetermine mo siya based sa economic qualities like wealth, yung status pwede siyang makita in non-economic qualities kasi yung status, according kay Weber, ay based or makikita sa distinct lifestyle, formal education, and differences in hereditary or occupational prestige. Yung status groups, mini-maintain nila yung boundaries through particular practices and symbols. Ang pag-maintain kasi ng boundaries ay importante para sa mga status groups dahil mas symbolic ang borders kaysa sa actual. Generally speaking, sabi ni Weber, mini-maintain natin yung boundaries around status through marriage and eating restrictions, monopolizing specific modes of acquisition and different traditions. For example, yung marriage restriction, we can think of religious or ethnic groups na pinapractice yung endogamy o yung pagpapakasal within specific group na nire-record ng kanilang custom or law. Yung feast naman, almost restricted siya, diba, sa group members, and usually nakikita siya as a way para mag-unite yung group as a one. Ang good example nito, I think, yung Jewish Passover Seder. Hindi ko alam kung tama yung pronunciation ko, pero yun. And then, when sociologists talk about Weber's three issues of stratification, typically, they refer to them as class, status, and power. Pero hindi kasi power yung ginagamit ni Weber na word, kundi party. Pero syempre ang nasa isip pa rin niya is within the sphere of power. Para sa kanya, power or party is yung abilidad ng isang tao or group of people na gawin yung gusto niya or isakatuparan yung sarili niyang paniniwala sa isang social group kahit maraming hindi sumasang-ayon sa kanya or sa kanila. Basta lagi lang natin tatandaan na sa power, laging involved ang social organization or yung tinatawag ni Weber na party. Ginamit ni Weber ang word na party para makita niya yung social practice ng power. Yung social groups na tinatawag ni Weber na parties ay yung mga social group na oriented toward controlling an organization and its administrative staff. So, a party organizes para makuha nila yung ideal or material advantages para sa active group members nila. Dumako naman tayo sa cross-cutting stratification. Isa sa enduring contribution Weber sa conflict theory, syempre ay ang tripartite distinction of stratification. Ito yung class, status, and power or party. Sabi ni Karl Marx, ang pagkakaroon ng conflict or overt conflict ay dahil daw sa bipolarization. Kapag daw yung isang issue ay closer to having two defined sides, mas lalong magiging overt and violent ang isang conflict. Ang example ng cross-cutting stratification ni Weber ay, for example, isa kang empleyado na may high level of education pero ang position mo sa company ay low or mid-level lang. Pwedeng dahil wala kang experience or wala kang masyadong skills. Tapos may isa kang kasamang empleyado na may low level of education pero mas mataas yung position niya sa'yo. And pwedeng dahil meron siyang, mas marami siyang experience kaysa sa'yo. at mas marami siyang skills or nag-e-excel siya sa posisyon niya. Dito ngayon pumapasok yung different aspect of stratification, yung status, class, and power na nagkakaroon ng impact sa isa't isa, pero pwede rin naman na hindi nila naapektuhan ng isa't isa. Weber is arguing that the kind of conflict that produces social change is a very complex issue. Different factors have to come together in unique ways in order for us to begin to formulate groups and identities capable of bringing about social change. Pumunta naman tayo sa authority and social change. At the heart of the issue of stratification and social change is legitimacy. Kapag nakikita mo yung bagay-bagay through cultural lens tulad ni Weber, makikita mo na para mag-work ang isang society or social structure, kailangan maniwala ang tao sa legitimacy nito. So, ang legitimation ay dapat nire-recognize ng tao at dapat accepted din siya morally. Kasi ang legitimation ay naglalaman ng stories or discourses na tinatanggap natin at ito ang nagiging reason para maging valid or acceptable ang social structure. Kapag ang legitimation ay sobrang strong, magiging inevitable and hindi na siya kayang kontrolin ng tao. Ang halimbawa nito ay yung argument about gender na ang women daw ay hindi kaya mag-think logically at ang men naman ay hindi kaya mag-alaga ng anak dahil daw sa nature ng sex nila. May dalawang uri ng legitimation. Ang subjective, ito yung internalized ethical and religious norms. At ang objective, ito naman yung kung saan ang mga social group and organizational staff ay may kakayahang magpataw ng parusa sa mga hindi susunod. Lagi na lang natin tandaan na magwo-work lang ang legitimacy because people believe in the rightness of the system. Kasi para mag-work ang isang system of domination, dapat naniniwala ang tao dito. And ang reason behind it is the cost involved in the use of power. Kasi kapag hindi naniniwala ang tao sa authority na taglay ng social group or society or government, ipo-force na yun sila na mag-comply gamit ang coercive power. Alam naman natin na ang coercive power ay ginagamit para sumunod yung mga tao sa pamamagitan ng force or threats. Sa kabilang banda, ang authority ay nakabase sa paniniwala ng tao sa rightness ng system. Kapag sumusunod sila dahil alam nilang yun ang dapat or yun yung tama. At dahil nga base ang authority sa socialization, norms, values, nagre-require lang ito ng low level of external social control. May tatlong types of authority according kay Weber. Una, ang charismatic authority. Nagre-respond yung tao sa ganitong authority dahil naniniwala sila na may special calling ang isang individual. Pangalawa, ang traditional authority. Dito naman kapag sumusunod yung tao dahil ino-honor nila yung past at naniniwala sila na time-proven method are the best. And third, yung rational legal authority. Dito naman naniniwala sila sa ganitong authority dahil naniniwala sila na ginawa ang laws or yung batas sa fair at maayos na paraan. So, combining Weber's idea of class, status, and party with his argument concerning authority and social change, we can put together a theory of conflict and social change. So, mangyayari lang ang social change kapag yung legitimacy of the stratification is questioned. Magkakaroon ng conflict and change kapag mayroong gaps between groups or kapag mayroong limited upward mobility. In Weberian sense, magkakaroon ng significant social change kapag mayroong perceived correlation ang class, power, and status. In other words, kapag nakita ng tao na ang other group or certain groups ay high on all three stratification domains, which is yung power, status, and class, and yung other groups naman ay low, then kukwestiyonin nila ngayon yung legitimacy ng buong system. For Weber, social systems will move cyclically through routinization and charismatic change. At different times, for different reasons, social groups will question the legitimacy of domination.